Welcome back to Epic Movie Home. Today I'll be reviewing a drama film of 2022, titled In Our Prime. Spoilers ahead, watch out and enjoy the video. In the most prestigious high school in South Korea where the 1% assembled, Han Ji-woo find it difficult to fit in. He used to be the most intelligent student in his former school, but on getting here, he is surrounded by geniuses who makes it harder for him to cope, especially in maths, which is considered the most important subject to gain admission into college. His classmates are from wealthy families, so they can afford money for tutorials and boot camps, but Ji-woo coming from a humble home and can't afford such things. His math teacher, Mr. Kim Gun-ho, reminds him these low grades of his won't be enough to make him get into a college and asks Ji-woo to consider changing of school. One night, his hostel mates gave him money so that he can sneak out of the dormitory and get some snacks and alcohol, but on his way back, Ji-woo was caught by the school watchman Lee Hak-sung. When it's daybreak, Mr. Kim questioned Ji-woo on those else were part of the plan, but Ji-woo values loyalty and chose not to expose his friends. This caught the attention of his classmate Park Boram, but refusing to speak out also gets him kicked out of the dorms. After class, his roommates gave us some funds as gratitude and well in awe, after Ji-woo refused it saying it's of no need. They discussed other possible ways and routes of bringing their late-night snacks into the dormitory, but this had been impossible since Hak-sung started working as a watchman. They named him the commie officer, being a North Korean defector. Later, Hak-sung went to see his doctor about his health, who told him to quit the job of a watchman as it isn't good for his health status and relying on sleep pills affects his biorhythm negatively. Hak-sung told him that it is the only job he can be given as a defector, so unless the doctor can find him a different job elsewhere, he will continue with the pills. Afterwards, Hak-sung returns into his small apartment, where he spends his time drinking strawberry milks, solving Sudoku puzzles and feeding his little turtle. The next day, Ji-woo was kicked out of his dormitory, and will have to find another place to stay for the meantime. Boram teases him of being a dummy, saying he should have spoken up earlier in class, but maybe she was wrong. Couple of hours later, Ji-woo have returned to his family house. He cleans the dishes and the room before his mom come back from her workplace. Being a widow, Ji-woo's mother has worked very hard to raise him while growing up, and she's very proud of herself to see her son in such a unique uniform. Ashamed of telling his mom he needs a place to sleep, Ji-woo instead says that he only came to check on her and he must return to school before it gets late. It begins raining on his way back, so he tries to hide in the school's abandoned lab, but again, he was caught by Hak-sung the watchman. Hak-sung felt a bit bad when Ji-woo told him he have no place to sleep, so he took him to his office. While Ji-woo was asleep, Hak-sung found the very math homework Ji-woo finds difficult to solve. As soon as it's sunrise, Hak-sung kicked Ji-woo out of his office. While in the maths class, Ji-woo was shocked when he found out Hak-sung had helped him to do his homework, and even more shocking, all the answers were all correct. Boram noticed this and wants Ji-woo to show it to the teacher, but he asks her to remain quiet. After the class, Ji-woo went to thank Hak-sung for his help and requested him to teach him how to do it, but again, Hak-sung kicked him out of his house. Later in the library, Ji-woo overhears that even his classmates' private tutors have trouble with some of the math problems, thus this indicates how intelligent and special Hak-sung is. Ji-woo starts following him around, begging him to be tutored, but Hak-sung wasn't moved by his words and seems less concerned. One bright afternoon, while taking out the trash, Hak-sung eavesdropped the teachers discussing about welfare students with uncaring and less privileged parents, and Mr. Kim included Ji-woo on the list. The next time Ji-woo approaches him for tutoring again, Hak-sung told him to consider change of institution and that one's self-pity is not a badge to carry, but it rather puts one into a tragic situation. Ji-woo explains how bad it makes him feel that others can have opportunities he couldn't. This made Hak-sung gives in and accepts to be his tutor, and he only requested strawberry milks as payments. The next day, Hak-sung visited an old friend in Gi-chol, who helped him escape from North to South Korea because he works as a support leader in Seoul's North Korean defector. They played board games together and discuss about life, and when Hak-sung got the lamp he needed as a gift from Gi-chol, he insists to pay for them because he came into the country to work and not for charity. When night falls, Hak-sung puts the lamps inside the school's abandoned lab so he can teach Ji-woo there, in secret. He told Ji-woo there are 3 rules that he must follow. Rule number 1, nobody must know about these classes. 2, no questions other than mathematics. And rule number 3, he will only teach him and doesn't want to hear anything concerning grades and tests. After Ji-woo promised to follow all the rules, Hak-sung gave him the first exercise, finding the area of a triangle. Ji-woo solves it quickly as he finds the question simple, pointing out it's a middle school problem, but Hak-sung tells him he's wrong by drawing a circle around the triangle. Feeling confused, Jiwoo thinks it's rather unfair because he was given a wrong and different question, but Hak-sung points that he is approaching solving of problems in the wrong way. Of course, finding the answer is important, but understanding what the question is all about is more important. Math is all about the process of finding the solution. When Jiwoo shows an understanding about the concept, Hal-sung calls it epsilon as he have a flashback about how younger he and a friend received a fancy pen as a prize for their academic success. Epsilon means small and insignificant, or evenly related to zero. After the class was over, since Jiwoo still doesn't have a place to sleep, Hak-sung allows him to stay with him. Jiwoo discovers that Hak-sung loves listening to classical music on an old cassette player, so they chat about classical musicians for a while, which helps Hak-sung to avoid Jiwoo's questions about his past. The cassette is old and worn out, having a bad sound quality, so Jiwoo plays the songs on his phone, the quality of which fascinates Hak-sung and helps him sleep deeply for the first time in years. This makes him stays in bed until late in the morning, and when he wakes up, Jiwoo has already left for school. While in class, Mr. Kim has an important news for his students. Instead of having finals, his class will participate in a prestigious math competition, which will be used as their exam. The students aren't excited about this since they only have 2 months to prepare, but Mr. Kim expects them all to win gold. Jiwoo goes to see Hak-sung every day for math classes, and Boram begins noticing how often Jiwoo purchases strawberry milk, which makes her start suspecting something is wrong. One evening, there's a particular difficult exercise he needs to know how to solve, but Hak-sung explains he expects him to add it up manually. Few hours later, Jiwoo manages to solve the problem, but Hak-sung refuses to tell him whether he is right or wrong because his homework will be to discover it himself. That's the job of a mathematician. As week passes, Jiwoo increases his math skills more and more every day. One afternoon, he receives some heartbreaking news. A close friend and fellow welfare student is transferring back to his old school, admitting having coming here is never worth it. Now Jiwoo has some thinking to do about his own situation too, but Boram tries to hear him out, but he feels like she's making jest of him by saying they're in the same situation when she's actually from a rich home too. Their conversation is interrupted when Boram's mother comes to pick her up. When they get into the car, Boram is scolded for hanging out with a welfare kid. Boram is technically on welfare too because of her divorced parents, but she isn't on financial aid, so it isn't really the same. Her mother also scolded her for listening to piano music because she wants Boram to concentrate on her studies, so she hired Mr. Kim to be Boram's private tutor, which is inappropriate. Later that night, Jiwoo tells Hak-sung about his friend and wonders if he should transfer too. Hak-sung encourages him not to give up and reminds him that the most important to succeed isn't brilliance but the courage to prevail till the end. To prove his point, he shows Jiwoo the exercises he corrected. While there are some mistakes in the final solutions, the boy has correctly learned the process to solve them. That same night, Jiwoo's suspension ends, so he gets to go back to the dorms, but he admits missing sharing a space with Hak-sung. The next day, Boram gifts him strawberry milk with an apology note, and when he gets distracted, she follows him to the abandoned lab and discovers his secret. After thanking Hak-sung for taking care of Jiwoo, she asks if she can also be part of the lessons, and Hak-sung accepts as long as she keeps it a secret too. Boram also calls him Kami officer, and this confuses Hak-sung. He may be from North Korea but he never served in the military. For a reason he doesn't want to explain, and he was spared. At that moment, they notices some students sneaking around the campus, but having learned what happened to Jiwoo previously, he chooses not to do anything about it. Another night, Jiwoo asks Hak-sung why he studied math so hard. He explains that at first, he did it for the scholarship and the sake of his family, but the more he learned about it the more interesting he found it, so he fell in love with it. Then, they call Boram to join Jiwoo at the piano so he can teach her a cool little trick, assigning a note to each digit. The two of them make a beautiful melody by playing the number pi. During the next maths class, Jiwoo corrects Mr. T. Kim's answer to an exercise using the logic Hak-sung taught him about incorrect questions. However, Mr. Kim scolds him for it. The answer may be correct, but it's not what the examiners intended, and that's the only thing the students need to worry about, giving the solution expected, and not the one that's right. But Jiwoo doesn't agree and replies he will still give the right answers on the test. Considering him rude for such words, Mr. Kim made him stand outside the door for the rest of the class. Afterwards, Jiwoo informs Mr. Kim that he won't be transferring. In the afternoon, during another of Hak-sung visits, Gi-chul gifts him a smartphone so he's easier to reach. Hak-sung happily shows it to Jiwoo later, and the boy can't help noticing he's reading long thesis on his tiny screen. To help, Jiwoo asks a classmate to sneak him into the computer lab so he can print the entire document and gift it to Hak-sung. The next day is the Pythagoras test. Thanks to Hak-sung lessons, Jiwoo finds the questions easy and solves them with no difficulties, and while Boram starts well enough by remembering the music, she soon gets frustrated. Pressure takes toll on her, and she ends up leaving the classroom without finishing the exam. Her mother makes her stay at home on lies to the school, saying that they'll go away on a trip. When Jiwoo tries to contact her, all his texts were ignored. In the evening, Jiwoo and Hak Sung goes to a classical concert that Boram got them free tickets for because her family's company sponsors it. Boram never shows up, but at least Hak Sung enjoys it so much that he's moved to tears. Afterwards, Hak Sung invites Jiwoo to a dinner at his place, which makes Jiwoo realize this is the first time he sees Hak Sung eat. That same night, someone leaks the Pythagoras test on the internet, causing trouble for the teachers, who now must find the student who did it if they want no trouble with the education board. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Hak Sung go to a bookshop to do some shopping, and a stranger recognizes Hak Sung. This man also comes from North Korea and calls Hak Sung doctor, remembering him from the days Hak Sung taught classes at a university he attended. The man also refers Hak Sung as the famous mathematics genius and takes Jiwoo as his son, which put them in an awkward situation. Hak Sung thanks the man for the memory and rushes to leave the store, refusing to answer Jiwoo's questions. When he gets home, Hak Sung remembers the good time he used to have with his son Lee Taeyeon, like getting the turtle, having dinner together, and buying strawberry milk because it was Taeyeon's favorite. The next day, some important news appears on TV. The Riemann hypothesis, one of the most important mathematical problems, is about to be solved by a famous North Korean called Lee Hak Sung. So far it's still ongoing review by a board of scholars. Professor Oh on TV tells the story of how he enters into a math Olympiad when he was a kid and met Hak Sung, who represented the North while Oh represented the South. They both were given a fancy pen by a famous mathematician and Oh still has it to this date. Both Gi Chul and Jiwoo sees the news, and it's Jiwoo that first finds Hak Sung first to ask him about it. However, Hak Sung gets angry and asks him not to ever mention the Riemann hypothesis again. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim is having troubles with the test incident because his career is on the line, but when a co-worker reviews the security tapes after a student passed on some rumors, he finally finds his salvation. The following day, Mr. Kim calls Jiwoo to show him the recording of him sneaking out of the computer lab with some printed sheets in his hands. Jiwoo tries to explain that it's unrelated, but he have no evidence to prove his point. Given that the tape evidence and that the fact he miraculously become better at math after just a few months, nobody will believe him, so Mr. Kim offers a deal. If he accepts to transfer, he won't make his blame public. Soon, the rumors of Jiwoo having done the leaking soon reaches everyone, and Boram was concerned because she knows the truth. Gi Chul is having some troubles on his own too. North Korea is angry that South Korea is taking Hak Ding's achievements, especially since these discoveries are tied to military encryption, so the niche wants Gi Chul to convince Hak Sung to appear on TV to clarify matters. Hak Sung's name is all over the news now, and an old colleague even visits him to convince him to return to the North together. Gi Chul visits Hak Sung to apologize for not being able to keep the niche off his back, but Hak Sung is still thankful for all the years of protection. While Hak Sung is parking to leave town, Gi Chul hands him the document with his research, which Hak Sung tries to throw away years ago and Gi Chul saved it because it's too valuable to be trash. At that moment, Jiwoo arrives as well, but decides to stay outside when he hears the noise. Hak Sung is angry because it was this same research that cost him his son's life, so he refuses to put it on TV. After Gi Chul leaves, Jiwoo tries to talk to Hak Sung, but the old man only yells at him, refusing to accept they are anything other than a tutor and student. Afterwards, Jiwoo receives a call from a worried Boram, who can't figure out why he's letting them to frame him up, but he just tells her it's over and hangs up the call. In the meantime, Hak Sung arrives at a bus station and when he thinks he saw his son's face on a random person, B begins to remember the night Taeyeon died. After he got into another fight for defending fellow defectors, Taeyeon began arguing with his dad, accusing him of having escaped to South Korea for his selfish interests because he didn't do it when his mom was sick with tuberculosis. Hak Sung insisted he did it to give his son a better life, but Taeyeon make it clear that doing entry jobs and being treated like dirt was far from a better life for a scholar. After wishing his dad to enjoy his life with only math as company, Taeyeon ran away and tried to go back to the north by swimming, but he was shot on sight by the border patrol. Back to Jiwoo, he sneaks into his home to use his mother's stamp on the transfer papers while she was asleep. The next morning, he hands the papers to Mr. Kim, who tells him he did the right thing. Ham Sung is hiding in a hotel while Gi Chul searches for him to take him to the TV show, and he's surprised to get a call from Boram telling him about Jiwoo's transfer. That afternoon is the Pythagoras Award ceremony. Jiwoo on his way out of the school was stopped by Boram, who prevents him from going by stealing his bag and head towards the school auditorium, With no choice, Jiwoo followed her. Professor Oh opens the ceremony with a speech about the recently proven theory, and that's the moment Hak Sung arrived at the event, having free his turtle into the river. He presents his pen as a proof of identity, and Professor Oh, who was Hak Sung's childhood academic rival, allows him to give a speech on the podium too. After making a joke about his job as a watchman, Hak Sung confesses that he was the one that taught Jiwoo maths and presented the printed thesis as proof that he didn't leak the test. He also reveals that it was Mr. Kim that leaked the test to his private students, which causes Mr. Kim to leave in shame and anger. Hak Sung then shares a bit of his story. He defected North Korea so he can study math properly, because his own government was using his research to build weapons. He wants his maths to be used to find jobs and get into good colleges, but such desire costs him his son's life. In tears, Hak Sung thanked Jiwoo for believing in him and staying loyal to his secret until the end, even if it would cost him his future. Gi Chul, who had been waiting outside, offers Hak Sung a ride home. While in the car, he snatched and threw away the smartphone he gifted Hak Sung, and reveals a little surprise for him: a new legal passport that marks Hak Sung as a South Korean citizen, and tickets for him to leave town so the niche can't find him for a while. Gi Chul will definitely be fired for it, but he thinks it does worth it. Sometimes later, Gi Chul went to meet Jiwoo and presents him the gift Hak Sung left for him, the famous pen and the first draft of his thesis. 3 years later, Jiwoo, who is now in college, visits the Oberwolf Research Institute for Mathematics. Hak Sung is working there now, and Jiwoo surprises him with some strawberry milk, and they hug before diving into a long talk about maths. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification button to enjoy more.